It is really a pleasure to be continuing along in a wonderful summer speaker series which Rabbi Berkowitz arranged. And today I'm privileged to introduce Matthew Silverman. Matt became the executive director of the Silverman Institute for Jewish Studies in April of 2020, which means he hasn't had a day of normal at the Many of us know the Silverman Institute as the Foundation for Jewish Studies, which has been an important community institution with whom we've worked for many lectures and scholar in residence projects over a course of many, many years. The institution has gone through some transitions which were exacerbated by the challenges and opportunities of the pandemic, and I know we're going to hear more about those today. Matthew is a native of Northern Virginia, a graduate from James Madison University with a bachelor's degree in economics and religion. He also attended the Candler School of Theology at Emory University and the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, where he received 2 different Master of Arts degrees. Most recently, he served as assistant director of the religious school at Congregation Emmanuel in Houston, Texas. Matt has worked and taught in numerous Jewish organizations throughout the country, including the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, Camp Ramah Darom, Hillel of Georgia, Jewish Family and Children's Services of Philadelphia. He lives here in Maryland with his wife Jill, who is a colleague, and also I think if the mother of my wife is the mother-in-law, then the boss of my wife is my boss-in-law. So Jill's my boss-in-law. And 2 daughters, Nava and Miri. Family time is filled with gardening, fused glass art projects, chasing the dog, and bouncing on the new trampoline. A privilege to welcome Matt Silverman, Resiliency and Adaptation, Adult Jewish Engagement Through the Pandemic and Into the Future.
Good morning. I want to start by thanking Rabbis Berkowitz and Safra for inviting me to speak this morning. It is a joy to have the opportunity to spend Shabbat with all of you. Jewish tradition teaches us that Rabbi Akiva was 40 years old and literally had still not learned anything. He came upon a weathered rock at a well and asked, "Who carved a hole in the stone?" Others responded, "It is from the water, which constantly falls on it day after day. As the verse in Job teaches us, water erodes stone." Rabbi Akiva immediately applied this to himself. He thought, if something soft can carve something hard, then call the Homer, all the more so. The words of Torah, which are like steel, can engrave themselves in my heart. He immediately set off to study Torah, beginning with the letter Aleph. Many of you have probably heard this story, and being the director of the Silverman Institute for Jewish Studies, whose mission is to provide adults with high-quality, in-depth encounters in Jewish learning, it is easy to see the hook in this story. That is, the transformative power of adult Jewish learning and the ability of anyone to begin studying at any point in their lives. If Rabbi Akiva can begin his studies as an adult and become a great Jewish scholar, then truly the opportunity to begin and continue studies is accessible to all. That is all very true, and I would like to take us in a different direction. This midrashic story illuminates Rabbi Akiva's entry into Jewish learning, but it doesn't delve into his state of being. What could Rabbi Akiva have felt in that moment? What was it that emotionally inspired or motivated him? He shifted the entire direction of his life. I imagine, much like any transitional time we experience today, he likely would have felt a mix of feelings: nervousness, excitement, tension, unease. Such a transition and transformational moment, a liminal moment, is often accompanied by a degree of anxiety and excitement of the unknown paths ahead. There are many, many moments in the Jewish calendar where we are to feel this transformative liminality, both in times of sadness and in times of joy. Tisha B'Av, which was just 2 weeks ago, and even this week's Parsha are times to reflect on the uncertainty of life. Tisha B'Av is a time to experience the sadness, grief, and uncertainty, traditionally through reflecting upon the destruction of the temples. Those were 2 of the most transformative experiences in Jewish history. after which Judaism was never the same. In this week's Parsha, the Israelites near the Promised Land, a time of excitement, but Moses will not let them forget the painful and difficult journey to this time. Many lessons had to be learned along the path. Given the past year and a half, more so than most years, we can relate to these liminal moments. We, both as a society and world, and likely on an individual level, are experiencing a major liminal moment in this time. We have experienced a disruption of our lives filled with so much uncertainty and so many emotions. And like Rabbi Akiva and the Israelites, we can move forward with newfound awareness and resilience. We have the opportunity to feel, to experience life anew, to deconstruct our patterns, and open up the opportunity to grow and transform. It is clear to me that this is happening for our society at large. This moment has uplifted and brought transformative awareness in so many areas, from politics to healthcare to the environment to racial and gender dynamics. And through this journey, much like Rabbi Akiva's life and the journey of the Israelites through the wilderness, our Jewish narrative and the world will not simply return to the structures of a couple of years ago. After Rabbi Akiva becomes one of the most learned scholars, the Midrash continues, "For Rabbi Akiva has brought to light things which are kept hidden from human beings." Rabbi Akiva's unique experiences and journey illuminated the texts and teachings in new and exceptional ways. As we move forward, Kal v'chomer, all the more so, the same can be said for adult Jewish learning. Adult Jewish learners are empowered unlike any time in history, with access to Jewish education at nearly everyone's fingertips. In April 2020, very few of us had ever heard of Zoom, let alone knew how to use it. Now, Zoom programming, or the online streaming of programs, is here to stay. We will all continue to have access to learning from scholars from around the world. This is truly an amazing transformation. At the Haberman Institute alone, we have offered programs with scholars from Israel, France, California, and New Mexico, just to name a few. Congregations, JCCs, universities, and rabbinical schools have and will likely continue to have online offerings. We have truly come through this period with extraordinary access and empowerment in our personal and communal Jewish journeys. Online learning is not only convenient for some, but the only access point to Jewish education for many. Approximately 25% of the Haberman Institute's audience now lives outside of the Washington, D.C. area. From families on rural farms in Colorado to professionals living abroad, anyone anywhere in the world with internet access now has a pathway to in-depth Jewish learning. Even in our own community, we know how expansive the Washington, D.C. area is, filled with traffic and icy storms in the winter. I grew up in Northern Virginia and only traveled to Maryland a handful of times as a child. The American Legion Memorial Bridge can feel like a great dividing line, but it is no longer a barrier to learning. From geography and accessibility, so many barriers have fallen away. With the removal of these physical hurdles, we have seen enormous growth in our attendance. At the Haberman Institute, we have reached many thousands of students through our online programs. Many of these students, as I said, would not have had access to these programs in their own towns and cities. At the same time, in-person opportunities to learn together are returning. Those who want to attend programs here at B'nai Israel or another community will be able to do so. In many cases, being together will not exclude those who still want to learn via streaming services. As I said before, online learning is here to stay. As I conclude, I would like to acknowledge again that this has been and continues to be an uncertain and scary time. Yet, the stories of our tradition offer me the comforting reminder that we are a creative and resilient people. Rabbi Akiva became a great scholar. The Israelites entered the Promised Land, and we, at the Haberman Institute, are empowered to move closer to our vision of a Jewish community enriched through lifelong learning, just as we are all empowered to explore new paths in our own Jewish learning and journey. I look forward to welcoming you all to one of our programs in person or online. Thank you and Shabbat Shalom.